This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio, visual news, and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us this week, his name is Chris Bach. He is from Extron Electronics. How are you, sir?
Very well. Thank you for having me, Tim.
Absolutely. Also with us is Dennis Holster. Dennis is from Powerhouse Alliance. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. Great to be here.
And last but not least, Cody Coachaver.
You got it. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You actually, Dennis, you should have released a new product this week because the other two guys have done so. Come up with something by the end of the show, and we'll.
You got an hour.
Yeah, you got an hour. We'll come with it. But no, it's kind of cool. Cody's company Jido came up with a really interesting AV and control over the network, and Extron, we'll talk about them as well, but they had a couple of really cool announcements this week. First, and if you're not familiar with what AV Week does and what we do, is we take the news and we kind of wrap it up and tell you why it matters to you as the AV integrator, as the AV community. We have so many, let's call them acquisitions this week. And so acquisitions and company movements. How about that? First, though, I just kind of want to say a quick shout out and a quick congratulations to our friends over at Commercial Integrator. Last year, they did something called the 40 Under 40. I was very honored and very humbled to be a part of that rookie class, as they called it. And so just this morning, they just recently announced this year's edition of the 40 Under 40. And there are so many people that are very deserving winning this award. A couple of them that have something to do with AV Nation and kind of the things that we do. One of them is our buddy Bill O'Donnell. Bill's been on our EdTech program. He's also, if you've ever seen us running around Infocom or ISE, he's been one of our main camera guys. He's been a great producer for us, so congratulations to him. Krista Bender, who's been on our show before. Hope Roth, great programming mind. She was one of them. So there's all sorts of other people. Victoria Ferrari, who's been on the show several times. Marina Gregory, who's a part of Advanced AV, who's one of our underwriters as is Extron. She was one of these. So congratulations, Mike Tomei. He's also on our EdTech show. Heather Sidorowicz, who's been on AV Week several times. So if you're interested in it, go to commercialintegrator.com. A lot of these folks are going to be with us next week, the CI Summit, and that's another programming note for you. We're going to do a special from the CI Summit next week at in DC, I think. Yeah, it's in DC. So there's the 40 Under 40.
Congratulations to you then, Tim.
I'm not on it. I was on last year's.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I was on last year's. I'm not eligible anymore.
Oh.
Yeah.
Must have been the haircut. It was the haircut.
That it was the hair. It was a haircut last year. I turned 40 in May of last year, and they released it. What was it, August or September of last year? And I think they were very, very nice. Let's put it that way. There was a couple of us that had turned 40 last year, and that was like the just under the radar there. So
I heard they were thinking of changing the working title 40 at or equal or under 40.
Don't give an engineer a joke book. I'm just saying. There's
more where that came from.
Yes, I know. Trust me, I've heard some of your jokes. So, it's just starting. All right, let's see. Who the heck should we go to first? All right, let's do Layard. Right, Layard purchased Planar. Layard. Layard made a huge splash this year at Infocom. They had some really great displays, and they now have purchased, or in the process of purchasing, Planar, which traditionally has been more of a video wall company in that sort of I guess, that area of the industry. Dennis, we'll start with you on this one. What does this do for Layard, first of all, and then what does it do to Planar? This acquisition, this coming on board, this company that seems to be at least on the upswing as opposed to, floundering in the LED wall space.
First and foremost, it puts them on the map. It takes a brand name, adds them to their repertoire, puts them on the map, and suddenly they're in the business, as opposed to I don't want to say a bystander, but I'll call them a bystander. And Planar's name, I think their financial capabilities will add to them, and I think from here on in, it'll be something to be dealt with.
All right, very good, Chris. From your standpoint, what does this do for Planar being a part of a bigger company? At least in my mind, a bigger company.
Probably something similar to what we got going on with the story you're going to cover later. Gives everybody a shot in the arm. You pull your resources, and you've got a bigger army to go out for what is obviously increasing in scope. A lot of people that I talked to that went to Infocom all said that they were looking at video walls and they couldn't believe the size of the mullions that they're down to at this point. So there's obviously a push now to use flat panels like never before, whereas in the past you always had that big annoying gap in the center there that you could tell from 10 feet or closer was right up there in your face. I'm hearing things like 1 millimeter gaps.
Sub 1 millimeter.
Yeah, like 0.8.
Yes.
At some point, which is crazy. I can't imagine installing those things. Just imagine there's no raw material hold that thing in place at this point. You got to totally feather it into some sort of unistrut, I suppose, at this point.
And that's the thing with the 0.8. I mean, Chris, you mentioned you could tell the gap, you could tell the pitch, which is what the term they use. The pitch is the distance between each LED. Yeah. The pitch is less than a millimeter now, and 10 feet off you can't tell, right? 10 feet off you can't tell that it's an LED. So Cody, from your standpoint, you've been in AV for a long time. What does this do for Layard?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting move. Planar has such a great name, and Layard being a larger company, it's going to be interesting to see how they approach this acquisition, whether they stick with that name, that sub-brand name, or if they kind of layer them into their larger corporate name. Having that reputation in the industry already as they do, it'd be hard to move away and drop the brand name. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens.
All right, so let's pull in somebody who's done this week, and that's Chris again. Well, Extron announced this week that they purchased Entwine AG of Zurich, Switzerland, a company, quote unquote, involved in software development used for producing open source technologies. Entwine specializes in building end-to-end video capture and presentation capture solutions. So, Mr. Bach, you got some interesting things. You do something called an open box, where you break open, you take an Extron product and you crack it open and you show people how it does and what uses. It's interesting because you don't edit the sucker. You go from start to finish, and you're getting ready to do one for your guys' existing video capture. What does this do for you? What does this do for Extron?
Well, the S&P 351 is the box that you're talking about. That's one of our most red-hot things we got going now. It is a capture box, and it is a streamer simultaneously. And what it does for us is it gives us a big shot in the arm software-wise for ways we can manage a box like that. So a lot of these kinds of boxes frequently are marketed for higher education. So you got a class, you miss the class, you watch it after the fact. But a box like this could very well be in a hospital. It could be in some sort of corporate environment too, where you have a sales meeting and people watch it after the fact. The software that these SEAL team engineers wrote handles these kinds of boxes. The OpenCast Matterhorn open standard software is an example of what I'm talking about. It on some server talks to these units and says, based on a calendar, I want you to record this class for this long, and then when I'm done with it, put it in this location, and then have somebody go in after the fact and add metadata or thumbnails so that it's more attractive and easy to find. You could be dealing with hundreds of thousands of recordings by the time it's done. So the box has a relatively easy job, but it does a good job with it. But sometimes managing all that content on the back end takes a lot more work, and that's what those guys did, was basically software like that OpenCast Matterhorn that makes all that management possible, either on a small scale or on a huge enterprise scale. We have some stuff that we've been making called SCM and EMP, the Streaming Content Manager, and our player, and this takes that to the next level.
So when you say it gives you a shot in the arm from the software side, you're talking about the back end, not the
Yes.
user interface side? Okay.
Correct.
Right.
The user side could be any number of things. There's a face on the SMP with a bunch of buttons, so if someone's got it in a podium and they're comfortable with transport control buttons, they can do it right there with no control system. Or we could have a touch panel or some sort of panel in the room that controls things like lights and projector down and things like that to operate that. Or we could have it all automated through this kind of software like we're talking about. It could either be pushed, it gets assimilated by OpenCast Matterhorn, or it imports an iCal file, something that OpenCast can create or Google Calendar can create or any number of other things.
Okay, all right. Dennis, from where you stand, what does this mean for both for Entwine, but also for Extron and their class capture stuff?
I think that business right now is starting to explode. So, obviously, if they can, go from hitting a single to hitting a home run by this, and I assume the value was right. They now have put themselves in way advanced of anybody else pretty much in the industry. And from our perspective, when schools and all of this thing, it's becoming so popular that soon you're never going to have to leave your sofa. You're just going to be able to pull everything up, and if you miss 12 classes, and you'll just be able to play them back through a software management program like this, and you're ready to go. So I think I might go get another degree now.
Okay, now hang on for a second. You hit on something, right? And this is, we do a monthly show called EdTech. We focus on education. That pedagogical discussion has happened more and more. That the subject right there that Dennis hit on, and that is students not going to class, and it depends on the university you're talking to, mm-hmm. which will determine their point of view, and that is if they're paying the tuition, they're paying for their books. Does it matter if they physically go to class, right? And I don't know if I'm progressive or if I'm naive, but I personally don't think it does really. You've got iTunes University has been around for years. We're talking probably, I know for a fact, 8 years. And you've had folks like Harvard and Stanford, so many others put their classes online. And Dennis, you're right. You could go get another degree from them.
What's interesting though, Tim, is I just talked to a couple of universities earlier this year, and there's a disparaging gap between forward-thinking ones like you're inferring and some that have been in the game mostly on the instructor side for decades, where they worry this technology will devalue their existence. Their IP will suddenly just be out there for everybody, and why would you need a professor anymore when you could just watch the video at this point? So I wonder how we'll get some over that hump too as we talk about this.
To that point, can't you encrypt some of those files? You can.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But I think people that aren't used to technology at all, we're talking about people that flip on a light switch and put a Mylar slide on the overhead projector in some cases, just assume that by it being recorded, it could be anywhere.
Please tell me no one is still using those over.
You unfortunately might be surprised.
You know what? I left education 2 years ago. We were still pushing, VCRs. We were still trying to find VCRs. So
we sell a lot of scalers with composite inputs for that reason.
Yeah, I know. Cody, from your standpoint, what's this mean for class capture?
No, I think it's a really great move in the power that is in just purely software-based solutions. Good on Extron to recognize that and pick up this tremendous capture software that's based on open standards. So, it's pretty incredible what people can do with software, but also recognizing where people are coming from and building on top of existing things. Like this company is using OpenCast Matterhorn, which I've seen a few different capture softwares use. It's a great open source software that exists already, but then building the tools on top of that to actually manage all those files, that's really where the the power comes in. So
Yeah.
I think that's a tremendous difficult problem to solve, and hopefully, Extron and their new acquisition can entwine together and make a really great product.
That was a good play there.
That
Very
that
nice.
hardware endpoint.
Very, very well done, Cody. Very well done. Using the N20. Never mind. All right. Next up. Good Lord Almighty. tvOne. tvOne is, I guess the best way to put this is divorcing Nortek, which is interesting. And let's kind of go through this if you haven't paid attention to Nortek the last few years. Let's look at, well, we've got a interesting, somebody has their
We got a feedback loop somewhere.
We do. Nortek has had some acquisition fun over the last few years. They picked up quite a few folks, and tvOne was one of them. And now they are doing an MBO, which I am not I do not have an MBA. So this is basically, I'm putting it in Tim speak. They're divorcing from Nortek. They're doing a management buyout. And they say tvOne's part, they're very excited about it. They expect this to actually be the best thing for the brand and for the company. Dennis, we'll kick this off with you. Is this, are they right? Are the folks, the management team at tvOne right? Is this a good thing for tvOne?
Looks like his frame's frozen.
Yeah, well, this is fun. Well, Chris, we'll hit with you first then. Chris, is this a good thing for tvOne? Good Lord.
Definitely, maybe. I couldn't begin to comment intelligently on that.
This is the opposite question. It's the opposite question of the planar and the Layard question, right? We talked about planar and Layard. I just made up their first name. We kind of agreed that planar coming on to Layard was a good thing for planar, right? You get a part of a big company. Entwine coming into Extron, that's great for both companies. It's good for both companies. So this is, I guess, the opposite question. Is it ever a good thing to get away from a big conglomerate? Cody, do you think that this is what's the best move here for tvOne?
Are you getting that audio?
I'm not.
There you are.
No.
No, we're not getting his.
No. All right, Dennis.
Oh,
how
we got
about
Dennis
you?
back.
Oh Lordy.
And we're all in electronics, so
We are.
I'm pretty familiar with Nortek and Core, and I think one of the things that Nortek did is they went out and obviously brought they had a lot of companies, then brought them under one roof, and I think hindsight's always 20/20, but looking backwards, they probably integrated them too quickly, and I think this is a situation where wrong time, right place, but wrong. Just don't think that.
All right, I'm going to move on to a different story and see if everybody's
Internet connection solves
will work.
itself.
Okay, let's go on to a different story here. How about projection mapping? How about that?
That'll work.
Is that everybody's? Cody, you there? Nope, sure not. No audio at all. All right, Chris, are you there?
You're just going to have to raise the QoS flag on this story, Tim.
Dog. Goodness gracious. All right, Dennis, are you there?
I'm back.
Good.
Did you hear any of that?
No.
It was prophetic, I'm sure.
It was probably the best answer you've ever given in the history of your life. But let's start it from the top there.
So what I said was that Nortek went out and assembled a bunch of great companies. And then these companies were acting on their own basically and decides to integrate them. And I think hindsight's always 20/20, but the integration, they tried to integrate them all at once. And I think what happened is this is a case of a good company being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And with so much going on at Nortek and Core, et cetera, I think this company found themselves on the outside, as did some of the other ones, and they just weren't proceeding quickly. This one went a different direction. The other ones are starting to get adapted and doing okay, but I think that's what this was. It was just at the wrong place, wrong time, not moving, and the management there said, hey, maybe we got to get away.
No. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, Core has had some issues, some financial issues over the last year or so. So that's probably the best. Seriously, let's go on to projection mapping here. One of the things that's happened at trade shows over the last year or so has been this whole projection mapping thing, and this year is probably at Infocom was on display like no other, and no pun intended. Panasonic had the mapping of the Tesla, which, first of all, having a Tesla mapped is really freaking sweet. So, Chris,
what are they going to do with the car when they're done?
Well, give it to me. I don't care.
Yeah, they should have done a giveaway.
Exactly. Hey, Cody's back.
Yeah.
Cody,
we are all together.
We are all together. Let's see if we can get through this. Cody, is there a real use case, I guess, or what is the best use case for projection mapping other than to make stuff like a Tesla look cool?
Well, I mean, I've seen some really interesting use cases for projection mapping, and that's mostly in like large production. So when you're doing shows, like these amazing shows that you go see, like
Cirque du Soleil.
Cirque du Soleil is something that comes to mind exactly. You go down to Vegas and you see these tremendous shows. And the really difficult thing about projector mapping is you need all this content that's actually made for that projection source. It's not like a screen. I mean, we had the 4x3 screens, and then we had to move to 16:9, but you're building content specifically for that projection surface. So projection mapping, I think, it belongs in that very specific, very unique use case where you're entertaining people. I think that's my opinion.
Okay.
That's where it belongs.
All right, Mr. Bach, from your standpoint, where does projection mapping belong?
In an experience center where you want some whiz-bang wow, or a museum, or like we were just talking about, Cirque du Soleil kind of stuff, entertainment. It's a major undertaking to pull one of these shows off. You've got, in this specific case, this Infocom set up 6 projectors, which by itself is an investment. Fortunately, they're laser-based in this case, so that's kind of a really cool cost of ownership step forward, because in the past you'd have some technician go out every other year for lamp replacement, and that would be 12 lamps, I'll say, in that setup, and then you'd have to color match each of those projectors because the lamps age non-linearly there, but that's not a problem here. So it's kind of inversely relative to practical, if you will, these kinds of setups. So custom, in a word, all the way is where these belong. You have to stand out, make an impression.
But aren't we getting to the point where this is becoming commonplace? And I say that through the lens of I don't engineer projectors, right? And the places I've seen these have been traditionally trade shows where, Chris, you're right. They invest, they bring the product. They've got 6 projectors. They've got 3 projectors. But good Lord, it maybe they're making it look too easy, right?
Well, that's the goal.
Well, okay.
I mean, if it was impossible for everybody to do, then it wouldn't be appealing as a technology. You want it to stand out. Well, look what we can do, and you can do too. But you have to, you got to take these 3D objects. You have to put them in software and find boundaries so that it ultimately shoots correctly onto there. So you've got the 6 projectors, you got the special structure, you've got the content that got created, and only a certain number of people are probably equipped to do that.
Yeah. All right, Dennis, from your standpoint, where does projection mapping belong?
Luxury, wow, and entertainment. I mean,
Okay.
That's really the bottom line.
It belongs in Disneyland too.
Yeah.
Apparently, we're doing for the 60th here, just down the street from our mothership in Anaheim. Apparently, they're lighting up the buildings with content. Josh told me that it was some of the best mapping he'd ever seen in his life.
Well, and that would be our editor-in-chief, Josh Schrago, and this is not the first time that Disney has done it. They've been mapping both the castle in Disneyland as well as Disney World. I saw some videos over the winter of them taking the castle and taking scenes from Frozen Again, over the winter, and that makes sense because it's frozen, it's snow and all that jazz. Sorry, sometimes you have to explain it to the folks who don't have a.
That haven't heard the soundtrack 400 times.
Well, you have children under 10 or 12 in your house. You're going to hear, Let It Go in your sleep, in a nightmare. Anyhow, so yeah, this is not the first time that the mouse has done it. And so the Disney and Cirque du Soleil, I get, right? You've got a lot of money, you have a lot of research going in, you've got a lot of technical talent, you've got lot of really, really talented folks who are Disney Imagineers, and if you've ever met a Disney Imagineer, holy cow, those folks are incredibly smart, incredibly talented, and every time I visit a Disney theme park, I'm thankful that they're out there. But that's not the norm, right? That's not,
Exactly.
Walking down the street or going to the mall and seeing that. That is a special experience, and maybe that's kind of what we're saying, guys. Is that it's an experiential thing? It's something where you go to something like that, and it's not that we expect it, but it's one of those things where when it happens, it's like, yeah, this feels right. This feels like this is where this is supposed to be. So I can buy that. All right. Let's go on. Another thing that you got that Extron released this week is something very interesting to me, at least. And Cody, we're gonna kind of tail off of this conversation into your conversation as to what Jaido does. Chris, you guys released something, and
We have that habit.
what you do. A gentleman in the industry who covers this. He and I had a disagreement a couple years ago when you guys stopped doing Infocom, and his position was, you release something every month or so. I think every 6 weeks, which gets good press, right? And I get that, and I understand that. But there's also the trade-off of physically going and seeing folks. That's a whole other conversation. So in the last 2 weeks, you have done that very thing, which is release 2 or 3 products. This one, as a programmer, right? And again, this is what I do on a full-time basis. I manage programmers for Innovad. This one is holy cow. It's called the TLC Pro, which the fact that you worked in a 1990s band is really cool.
Yeah.
It's an all-in-one touch panel and processor.
Yep.
Now, not the first one, but it's the first one that I'm aware of that is a touch panel, right?
Right.
I've had experience with button interfaces before that were all-in-one, but not an actual touch panel. So, first question is, what led to this specific one? Why go with the graphical interface and processor in one?
The vast majority of what you see come out as a direct result of advisory councils we have here and dealer feedback. My job is, as a field engineer in 3 states, to not only commission things, design things, but take back what we either aren't making that people want us to make or that we should change, which we are already making. And you pointed out you've had experience with push-button controllers. We've made what we call media link controllers for over a decade. Mm-hmm. And those are fixed. You can't get in trouble with those because you only have so many buttons. So
yes, you can.
Well, yeah, okay, I'll bite. But you can get in less trouble. How's that?
Yes, there we go.
You have 11 buttons max to work with, and they can be configured to do a number of things, but they are what they are. They look the way they are. And the alternative to that is a touch panel, but then somewhere else has to be a box, a brain, that has wires coming out of it. Well, the media link with the push button was the brain, so the wires were coming out of that, and that's what people were asking us for, and that is a direct result from that. And that panel size is kind of the sweet spot for a lot of medium, smaller rooms. You don't always need a 7-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch panel to operate what little equipment there may be in that room. So we took them together.
All right, very good. All right, Dennis, we'll get you real quick, and then we're going to bring in Cody. Does this make sense? Does this, the whole all-in-one box, and I can see 2 sides of this. Yeah, again, as a programmer, I think I like it because it is, it's kind of like the all-in-one boxes for that have amplifiers and DSPs and video switchers and processors all in one. This is kind of in that same vein where you have one device that kind of does multiple things. Does that make sense for end users, or would you rather see kind of a componentized system?
It absolutely makes sense. All in one box. I mean, what are we going to have in the future that isn't touchscreen? I think that's the way everything is going to, and I think ease of use, people ought to be ecstatic that that's going to be now available instead of pushing all their buttons and the 800 wires coming out, and I think that's just where we're going. I just told you before, we're all going to sit on our sofa and never have to leave again.
That's right.
Other than you guys are going to have to go to get your haircuts, but other than that, I mean, it's we're going to be able to just sit here and do the information.
We were we were talking beforehand how a bunch of us got our haircuts this week, and Dennis did not because he's follically challenged as it. Cody, first question is: does this fit in the world of integration?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it makes sense that you can send out controls straight from any device, right? Like, as things become more and more connected and they're on a network as opposed to needing a physical connection, it makes sense that there's a piece of software or a piece of hardware or whatever that not only provides the user interface to the user, but also provides that network connection in the background to actually control all of the devices. So I think it makes sense.
All right. Let's pull this into kind of what Jido does, and you guys released this week. I'm not going to say go public because that makes it sound like you did an IPO, but you kind of made people aware of what Jido is and what Jido does. You guys do AV over it's a software, right? It's really similar to a couple other companies that I'm familiar with. One being my buddy Patrick over at AVWeek. He's in Germany. He was at Infocom this year, but it's configuration, but it's configuration that lives on a server, so it's more networked and enterprise based. How does something like this and other interfaces, because you still have to have an interface. I mean, there will come a time, most likely, where some systems will not require an interface, right? And I'm talking as a programmer here and somebody who sees this coming down the line. You're going to come into a place where occupancy sensors and RFIDs and near-field communication, that's going to be most of our interfaces with these control systems. But you're still going to need something somewhere to say, hey, I want to do this or I want to do that. As an enterprise-based system like you guys do, how do you guys see interfaces, I guess is the best way to ask that, when it comes to something that's more enterprise-based and more network-based like that?
Yeah, so one of our core beliefs is that the less interface that you have, the better the system is, really. You should be able to take cues from things such as people walking into the room and the devices that they're carrying, and like you said, occupancy sensors, or maybe there's other motion sensors or facial recognition systems that sit in the room. And you should be able to take all these cues and then cross-reference that information that you have and make things happen without actually having to press any buttons anywhere. Right now we do offer your typical standard interface that you can pull up on any kind of device, whether that be your iPad, your Nexus, your Surface, whatever you walk in the room with, and you can start to control that room. The reason that we went that route is because that's what people are used to and that's what they want right now. But it's our belief that as technology continues to progress and as that information becomes more in-depth on what actually is going on in the room. Right now we have motion sensors. We know if somebody's in the room, but in the next 2 or 3 years we're going to know who's in the room. Mm-hmm. And we're going to know what's on their calendar, and we're going to know what's going on. And there's no reason for them to walk over to any kind of interface, press a button to make anything happen. That should just happen for them as they show up for their meeting or their class or whatever they're showing up for.
So my question to that is, because I'm hearing that too from all sorts of people, because we make room scheduling things, we make obviously control systems of all shapes and sizes. How do you keep that system from misfiring when someone just came into the room to take a phone call, or a janitor comes in to clean up at night versus the monitor turns on or the screen drops down or this or that? That's like the next question that I've been wondering how to deal with going down the road.
Yeah, you need more reliable data sources of what's actually going on in the room. Like I said, right now a motion sensor really isn't enough information.
Exactly.
Right? Like you notice that somebody's in the room, you don't want to go and start making all these actions. So right now, that's why we have the buttons you press. But in the future, as the technology progresses and we can use beacon technology or something that actually has some kind of information about who that person actually is. And then we're also connected to a calendar where we can cross-reference what's on their schedule. And we have a more in-depth data set on what actually that person's intention in the room is. That's when you can start to remove those controls that right now are honestly still required.
Mm-hmm. So are we talking about, because I know in my head what I'm talking about, and I'm talking about RFIDs and
NFC or this or that.
NFC and Are you talking about more universal logins, Cody? Or are you talking about stuff like this, where it's something you wear, and it can be a wearable, it can be something in your pocket like a key fob? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I think we've worked with some clients where NFC is a valid way to identify who's coming into the room. You have the badge, you're walking into the room, that badge is in the room. That's great. But as these technologies start to become more adopted by all the users, already in your pocket, most people have a phone, and that has beacon technology. Beacon technology is a unique identifier. So starting to look at those things that you don't have to hand out to people, and that is issued by your company, but you're just coming into the space that includes your identity with it. There's a lot of different ways to do that, but the phone is the one that comes to mind right now, and eventually watches or something like that.
Yeah, the phone makes the most sense, because you've got all of this information, right? And it depends on.
And it's in your pocket.
And it's in your pocket, right? And my household, and I kind of do this on purpose because I want to see. My wife has an iPhone and I have an Android, and I do that on purpose because I want to see both ecosystems, right?
You don't want two phones in your pocket.
And I want two phones in my pocket, and I'm just an Android guy. I'm just, I like Google. We use them for the Hangouts. It's everything. I use Hangouts for my SMS, and it works for me, right? iPhone works for her. She's not as technical as I am. I'm not saying that you're not technical if you use an iPhone, but both ecosystems have this login information. Right, they know who you are and where you are, and obviously there are settings you can change. I was in LA last week for some training, and I got to hang out with Chris for a little bit, and there was we were going someplace, and I was going back and dropping off my rental, and I was looking for the Enterprise around LAX, and Google Maps said, "Hey, you were here 2 days ago. Is this the one you're talking about?" Sure enough, that's where I need to go. And for some people, that's scary, right? Guys that are my dad's age, right? My dad's generation, they get freaked out about stuff like that. What do you mean you knew where I was? Well,
resistance is futile, Tim.
Well, it is, and again, there are settings. There are settings you can change, and you can disable things, But for me, it works, and it makes my life easier. I have no idea where the heck the Enterprise that's connected to LAX is. I don't spend a lot of time in LA, but that feature right there is perfect for me. Just because of the amount of traveling I'm doing now with Innovad and some other stuff. Next week I'll be in DC for the CI Summit. I have no idea where any of this stuff is that we're going to, but thanks to Google Maps and the other devices that are on my phone, I can find my way around in a city I've never been to. So.
Yeah, how did we all get along without that technology back in the day? A map.
You had a map that you couldn't fold.
Or
I
Thomas,
remember printing out directions to job sites.
Exactly.
And then you would show up at the job site, and it's not the right place. And then what do you do?
And then you're like, well, what do we do now?
Yeah.
Well, because your instructions were 6 months old, and there was construction, and this and the other side. Yeah. All right, last story here from our buddies over at the Daily DOOH, from the National Bank of Canada. So here's an interesting thing. You can play tennis, right? It's in Daily Do digital out of home. They do signage, digital signage that's outside the house. It's interesting things for this. First of all, it's to commemorate the fact that the Rogers Cup, which is a Canadian tennis tournament, but you can take your cell phone, and connect to this device through a QR code, and you can play tennis. It's a video game that you can play tennis on right there on the street, and it's thanks to National Bank of Canada, their interactive tennis thing. First question is, and Cody, we'll start with you on this one. What is this? I mean, where are we going when it comes to digital signage and things like this? That's obviously it's an ad. Let's be frank about this. It's an ad for the National Bank of Canada. It's an ad for the Rogers Cup, but it's also something fun, right? And it's a way for them to kind of interact with clients and potential clients. Somebody that, I don't know, thinks that this is cool and fun, and hey, I'll go put my money in the National Bank of Canada. Where are we going to end up when it comes to digital signage?
Yeah, I have an interesting case of deja vu here. Maybe 8 years ago or so, I did Umpqua Bank, and we put in a bunch of Wii's, and we had this digital signage, and they played tennis on it. So it's
sweet.
It's interesting that somebody had to write an application to do all of this, but I think, in that project, it was an interesting pilot project that this bank did, and they were testing what kind of foot traffic is this different digital signage, different technology in our area going to bring into our bank. And you could come in and you could start to play the game, but then you also had the ability on those screens to kind of switch over and start to explore property. Like, I want to go out and look for a house to buy. So I do think that as people are getting used to kind of adapt or touching things and using this new technology through phones and through tablets and things like that, starting to see it show up in physical spaces where it's on the wall and you walk into a bank and there's something that you're familiar with, and I can go over and see specifically what the bank wants to present to me. I think, yeah, it's interesting to see what people can do with the software that sits behind these displays. I think that's really where the power comes into what's going to happen with the digital signage stuff.
No, absolutely. All right, Dennis, from your standpoint, where does this mean that we're going when it comes to digital signage and digital out of home?
I mean, we've been talking about a lot of this today, where everybody wants to know where we are, what we're doing, and marketing is, in the simplest form, the magazines that you get on your desk today have gone from an inch thick to about, we were talking about the screen size, to about 1/8 of a millimeter thick. There's very few pages. Everything is going to become digitally to you through something, whether it's your phone, whether it's your TV. Again, I go back to sitting on the couch, and these people are going to find you. Yeah, they're going to find you, and and it's a lot cheaper. While the software, obviously, and the ability to do this is expensive, once they succeed at this, everybody's going to know everything about everybody, and we got to be careful. Well, I don't mind. You can know all you want about me, and if you want to, you want to come in my phone and tell me you're going to offer me 1.6% for, a 30-year mortgage or a 15-year mortgage, more power to you. But there are a lot of people who use this.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that I kind of harken this back to, and I hate using this movie because everybody overuses it when they start talking about technology and futuristic stuff, and that's Minority Report. Because not only do you have the great user interface there in Minority Report when Tom Cruise's character is talking about the cases, and he's got this giant interface in front of him, but it's the digital signage, right? The part of Minority Report, whereas he's running through the terminal, his retinas are being scanned, his eyes are getting scanned, and they are serving up ads specifically tailored to him and calling his character out by name. Cody, we think that you're, we know where you're from this area and you're interested in this. We think you might like this type thing. And that actually kind of goes back to the interfaceless program or the interfaceless control systems where you walk into a room, that room knows you, right? That room knows that you're Professor Smith, and Professor Smith doesn't want to touch a darn thing. There's a lot of professors out there like that, and they just want to, all they use is their iPad, right? So as soon as Professor Smith walks into the room, the phone is recognized by the control system. The control system drops the screen, turns on the projector, and only allows and automatically connects their iPad to the projector and allows them to present from the iPad. And as soon as that professor walks out the room, the system shuts down. Right. That's some of what we're talking about here. So, all right, guys, that is going to do us. Mr. Dennis, thank you so much, Dennis Haltzer from Powerhouse Alliance. How can people get a hold of you, sir?
They can find me at dholzer at powerhousealliance.com or www.powerhousealliance.com. The nice thing is we don't release products. We just get in your eyes and market them and distribute them all over the country through 40 different warehouses. So if you're looking for anything in the residential field of audio, video, now security, and we're just really starting to poach into the light commercial stuff, we're the place to go, and we hope you'll come see us.
Yeah,
Tim, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell people what Powerhouse Alliance is.
Powerhouse is a consortium of 12 different members that are territorially bound. That collectively we have 40 warehouses across the country, and our main base of trade is the integrator. And again, we got together as a result of audio and video residentially, and we've migrated into the light commercial stuff, residential security, doing a lot of network. We're one of the 6 people who sell Ubiquiti products directly from Ubiquiti, which has become an unbelievable line out there. So we cater to the independent integrator who can stop at one of our 40 warehouses, and again, in today's business, not a lot of people stock inventory, so we're just in time, and doing pretty good at it.
All right, very good, and we'll see you at CEDIA this year?
You will see us at CEDIA. We actually have 2 booths.
Wow.
And we were the first group, and people are laughing, but I don't think they'll be laughing for long. We're the first group that has taken a deal with Vizio, and Vizio is going to be releasing a lineup of product specifically for the custom installer. And more importantly, they're going to be introducing the largest TV, which will be 120 inches diagonal, and we will be showing that in our booth at CEDIA.
Okay, then.
So
I will have to come by and see the 120-inch and see if I can't convince my wife that we need that. Cody Cochaber. Good Lord, from Jido. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
How can people get a hold of you and find out more about Jido?
Jido, JYDO.com is the best place to come and check out what we're up to. Tweet at us at JidoHQ, or send me an email directly, KODY@JYDO.com.
All right, very good. Last but not least, my buddy Chris Bach from Extron Electronics. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I made it back just in time. Google told me I was done because of authentication issues, so that was exciting.
Well, it's the California connection. We can only be on connected to California for 45 minutes, and then they cut us off.
Ah, yes. Limited packets for you.
It is. So how can people get a hold of you and or Extron?
They can go to Extron.com for all things Extron all the time, and they can get a hold of me with an email, cbach@extron.com.
All right, very good. If you want to get a hold of me, go by the website. That's the best place. We have a fancy schmancy little form that you can fill out. It goes to me. There's nothing fancy about it. But if you want to get a hold of me directly, it's Tim at avnation.tv. But the website, avnation.tv, avnation.tv, you will find this program and a host of others. I mentioned it at the beginning of the show. We're going to do a special from the CI Summit next week. A lot of the 40 under 40 from this year and last year will be there. So check that out coming next week. We also have a couple more international shows coming down the pipeline. tons of new shows. Our education-focused show, EdTech, has got a new one coming up. State of Control, Live Life. We have a brand newly revamped and retooled DIY show starting back up again in September, so check all that out if you would, please. Also, check out our underwriters. They're really great folks that help us do what we do. I mentioned the fact that we're going to be at CEDIA. Extron is one of those folks. Advanced AV, we talked about them at the beginning also, where they give us money because they enjoy what we do, they appreciate what we do, and they help us bring you these programs, help us bring you coverage of all the different events. So let them know that you appreciate that as well. avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been AV Week.